Hello everyone. Consider the following scenario. We have a C# application with entity framework, which is the basis for LINQ. And we have a context where we have courses, lectures, and units organized in such a way that a course has a little bit of data. Here I don't really care about what the data is, but rather about the structure. A course also has a relation, a one-to-one relation with lectures, which the entity framework neatly represents as an I collection of lectures. A lecture has, well, the reference to the course containing it and a series of units plus a little bit of content. Again, I'm just simulating content that we will not really care much about. And finally, we have the unit, and the unit doesn't have any further content, is not specified into n further items, but it rather has just the lecture reference into it. Okay, so now suppose, I've seen this pattern many times actually, and it can be quite inefficient, so here goes. So I've often seen something like this. So suppose that someone wants to get the lectures, then, the courses, so they would say courses is db.courses.where, let's say that we want all the courses where the name is, doesn't really matter, whatever, something, then someone does a to list. Later on they realize, oh, wait a second, I also need all the lectures that respect a certain condition. So db.lectures where, and then the title, well, the topic is YYY, and it doesn't really matter again what kind of title we have here or what kind of topic or what kind of condition, just a bunch of lectures. And then we have a series of units, and well, let's rename the C to L. Let's give it a semblance of decency. And here we want to have, yeah, again, the topic being, again, something else. All right. So this is going to do 3 queries, which is 3 round trips to the database, opening 3 connections. That's kind of a pity, but you might also notice that indeed those 3 queries don't really have anything to do with each other. So we can run this, and well, if we run this and we take a look at the terminal, well, we have these 3 full round trips that are going to appear into 1, 2, 3 full SQL queries. And if you think about all the overhead that's happening by constantly opening connections to the database, sending an SQL queries, getting the data back, opening the stream, parsing the stream, etc., and that's quite a lot of work. That's quite a lot of extra work. So it will be nice to be able to unify multiple queries. And drum roll, this is actually more than possible by simulating discriminated unions and concatenating the results. So what's a discriminated union? So we have these 3 things. We have these 3 queries. Just going to comment them out a little bit. No, not even actually. So suppose we have all these queries and we want to concatenate them. So let's say we call this the results. I remove the to list because the to list forces the database to run the query. Then I try to concat. This is obviously not going to work. I concat with the second query without the to list again, because if we do a to list, then we are moving the evaluation to memory. And finally, we concat with the units. There you go. And then let's put it outside, not concat with the units. Okay, so obviously this is quite broken, and let's see what error it gives us. Did I miss something? Well, let's find out what I did miss. Ah, there is concat. What are we doing wrong? Let's find out. Because it really should. Yeah, we have concat. So, oh. Yes, okay. So, oh, obviously, reading is important. A queryable, of course, does not contain a definition for concat, where the other query basically is lecture. So that's the problem, that the other query is returning a lecture. So we have courses on one side, lectures on the other side. So what do we do with this? How can we fix this? We need to make sure that all of these queries end up having the same result. But you might be wondering, how can we give all these queries the same result? Because one is courses, one is lectures, one is units. Now, what we can do is we can hammer all of these results into a structure which is the strict subset of all the fields we want to take with us. Notice that I've also sneakily already prepared an entity kind enumerable. An enumerable can be easily translated into just an integer or something similar into SQL. And the entity kind enumerable has three values: course, lecture, unit. So basically I'm going to turn courses into something that can contain either a course or a lecture or a unit with an entity kind that tells us which of the fields are valid. So let's do this. Let's say that we have the course, and now I create a new anonymous data structure that says, okay, now this one is a course, so the kind is entity kind dot course, and then I fetch all the extra information that I want to fetch. So for example, the course ID and the course name. So I'm copying the data over from the course, and then I add some extra data that is not really relevant, but it's really important that it's here, because this data is not going to be used in this subquery, but it will definitely be used in the other subqueries. Okay, now as we concat in the lectures, we're going to select the lectures, and for the lecture now we create again an anonymous data type, but the kind is now going to be entity kind dot lecture. Then we need to have all of these fields. And of course there is no course name and there is no course ID, but we do have a lecture ID and all the rest. Let me finish setting up this query structure. Now in this case the entity kind is going to be unit, and lo and behold, all of the red has disappeared, and now we simply have to fill up the structure. So now the lecture ID here is going to be L.ID, that's the ID of the lecture. The lecture topic is going to be L.topic, the lecture content L.content, and the lecture course ID is L.course ID. And finally, for the unit, notice that the course ID, well, this is a unit, so it's obviously not a course, so the course ID and the course name, we need those fields, otherwise concat is not going to be able to work. And because somewhere in one of those subqueries, we need a course ID and a course name. And we don't have anything about a lecture either, so those fields need to be here. Those values are irrelevant. You could use null instead of the empty string. So that's all fine, but the unit data really has to come with, really has to be set up correctly. So now here it's called L, no, that's a bad name, so let's call it U, stands for unit, also not really a self-documenting name, but bear with me. U.ID, U.topic, and U.lecture ID. Okay, and now the thing looks happy, so that's actually quite nice. But now you might be wondering, okay, but in the previous version of this piece of code, we had a neat variable called courses, a neat variable called lectures, a neat variable called units, and now I have these results. It's kind of hard to process. Yes, indeed. So let's parse it. Now before we parse it, let's see what happens when we run this. So, and look, we get one single query, which for bigger remote workloads is actually going to make quite a difference when it comes to overhead. And now we can simply extract the data. Courses is, now and this is all going to happen in memory because the results have been via toList have actually been materialized in memory. Now I can simply, first of all, exclude all the entities in the results where the kind is not equal to entity kind dot course, and here I can simply rebuild a course. So I have this entity with way too much information. I simply return a new course, and for the course I can set the ID, and that's e dot course ID, because now I know this is a course, and the name is e dot course name, and well, that's all we have for the course, so we're happy. Now we can simply say toList, and we go do the very same for the lectures, and you can guess yourself what would happen for the units. So for the lectures, again, we filter away all the entities in the result that are not a lecture, And in here, well, this is where we have to be careful, obviously, because when you get such a discriminated union built according to this pattern, you could still write this code. The compiler is not going to complain, but obviously you can't create a course here because you're going to have -1 as the ID and an empty string as the course name. So we have to be a little bit careful with this parsing bit. And well, so that's the only place where we actually lose a little bit of structure. And we have to be just careful that we don't break things. So the topic is going to be e.lecture topic, and the course ID is going to be e.course ID. Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, lecture course ID. Yeah, that's all a little bit tricky. So we have a decent naming convention here, which makes it easier to spot errors. But if you're distracted, you are going to make mistakes. And for the last one, I mean, we're so close. Let's just finish it. We create a unit, and now we get, okay. So for the ID, we get the unit ID. For the topic, we get unit topic, and for the lecture ID, we have to get the unit lecture ID. Now let's do a double check. We know that everything has to start with course here. So course ID, course name, that's good. Lecture ID, lecture topic, lecture course ID matches our expectation for the lecture. Let's see if there's any other attributes. Oh yeah, there we go. So we missed the content. No problem. E.lecture content. Okay, yeah, it's always good to do a double check. Unit ID, unit topic, unit lecture ID. And let's see what the IntelliSense suggests. No, that's the lecture, but that's cool. And now if we run this again, we see again that all of this unpacking can be done super quickly without ever touching the database. And indeed, we see that we only still have exactly one query that is sent to the underlying database system to the benefit of our latency. This pattern can be used for way more than only 3 entities, so you could potentially also join together 10 or 20 entities, and by also doing joining and group joining, you can indeed merge data and extract very, very complex data structures without boggling down your performance. Thanks a lot for watching, and until next time.